Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded for Monday, March 8th, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing the big news from this week. That's the EUA just issued for Janssen's COVID vaccine. And we'll also be discussing two new drug approvals, Nulibry for a rare genetic disorder, and Pepaxto for multiple myeloma. And as always, feel free to skip around. I'm going to include times in the show notes so you get the drugs that interest you. First up this week, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization for the third vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19 caused by SARS-CoV-2. The EUA allows the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine to be distributed in the US for use in individuals 18 years of age and older. The FDA has determined that the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine has met the statutory criteria for issuance of an EUA. The totality of the available data provides clear evidence that the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine may be effective in preventing COVID-19. The data also shows that the vaccine's known and potential benefits outweigh its known and potential risks, supporting the company's request for the vaccine's use in people 18 years of age and older. In making this determination, the FDA can assure the public and medical community that it has conducted a thorough evaluation of the available safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing quality information. The Janssen COVID-19 vaccine is manufactured using a specific type of virus called adenovirus type 26. The vaccine uses AD26 to deliver a piece of the DNA, or genetic material, that is used to make the distinctive spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. While adenoviruses are a group of viruses that are relatively common, AD26, which can cause cold symptoms and pink eye, has been modified for the vaccine so that it cannot replicate in the human body to cause illness. After a person receives this vaccine, the body can temporarily make the spike protein, which does not cause disease, but triggers the immune system to learn to react defensively, producing an immune response against SARS-CoV-2. The Janssen COVID-19 vaccine is administered as a single dose. The available safety data to support the EUA include an analysis of 43,783 participants enrolled in an ongoing randomized placebo-controlled study being conducted in South Africa, certain countries in South America, Mexico, and the US. The participants, 21,895 of whom received the vaccine and 21,888 of whom received saline placebo, were followed for a median of 8 weeks after vaccination. The most commonly reported side effects were pain at the injection site, headache, fatigue, muscle aches, and nausea. Most of these side effects were mild to moderate in severity and lasted 1 to 2 days. As part of the authorization, the FDA notes that it is mandatory for Janssen and vaccination providers to report serious adverse events, cases of multisystem inflammatory syndrome, and cases of COVID-19 that result in hospitalization or death to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System for Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. It is also mandatory for vaccination providers to report all vaccine administration errors to VAERS for which they become aware, and for Janssen Biotech to include a summary and analysis of all identified vaccine administration errors in monthly safety reports submitted to the FDA. The effectiveness data to support the EUA include an analysis of 39,321 participants in the ongoing randomized control study being conducted in South Africa, certain countries in South America, Mexico, and the US, who did not have evidence of SARS-CoV-2 infection prior to receiving the vaccine. Among these participants, 19,630 received the vaccine and 19,691 received saline placebo. Overall, the vaccine was approximately 67% effective in preventing moderate to severe critical COVID-19, occurring at least 14 days after vaccination, and 66% effective in preventing moderate to severe critical COVID-19 occurring at least 28 days after vaccination. Additionally, the vaccine was approximately 77% effective in preventing severe critical COVID-19 occurring at least 14 days after vaccination, and 85% effective in preventing severe critical COVID-19 occurring at least 28 days after vaccination. There were 116 cases of COVID-19 in the vaccine group that occurred at least 14 days after vaccination, and 348 cases of COVID-19 in the placebo group during the same time period. There were 66 cases of COVID-19 in the vaccine group that occurred at least 28 days after vaccination, and 193 cases of COVID-19 in the placebo group during this time period. Starting 14 days after vaccination, there were 14 severe or critical cases in the vaccinated group versus 60 in the placebo group. And starting 28 days after vaccination, there were 5 severe or critical in the vaccine group versus 34 cases in the placebo group. At this time, data is not available to determine how long the vaccine will provide protection, nor is there evidence that the vaccine prevents transmission of SARS-CoV-2 from person to person. And just a reminder for everyone, the issuance of an EUA is different than an FDA approval of a vaccine, in that a vaccine available under an EUA is not approved. In determining whether to issue an EUA for a product, the FDA evaluates the available evidence to determine whether the product may be effective and also assesses any known or potential risks and any known or potential benefits. If the product meets the effectiveness standard and the benefit-risk assessment is favorable, the product is made available during the emergency. Once a manufacturer submits an EUA request for a COVID-19 vaccine to the FDA, the agency then evaluates the request and determines whether the relevant statutory criteria are met, taking into account the totality of the scientific evidence about the vaccine that is available to the FDA. The EUA also requires that fact sheets that provide information, including dosing instructions and information about the benefits and risks of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine, be made available to vaccination providers and vaccine recipients. Janssen Biotech has also submitted a Pharmacovigilance Plan to the FDA, describing its commitment to monitor the safety of Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. The Pharmacovigilance Plan includes a plan to complete longer-term safety follow-up for participants enrolled in ongoing clinical trials. The Pharmacovigilance Plan can also include other activities aimed at monitoring the safety profile of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine and ensuring that any vaccine concerns are identified and evaluated in a timely manner. The FDA also expects manufacturers whose COVID-19 vaccines are authorized under the EUA to continue their clinical trials to obtain additional safety and effectiveness information and pursue approval. The EUA for Janssen COVID-19 vaccine was issued to Janssen Biotech, a Janssen pharmaceutical company of Johnson & Johnson. The EUA for Janssen COVID-19 vaccine may be revised or revoked if it is determined the EUA no longer meets the statutory criteria for issuance. The FDA also this week approved fosdenopterin, which goes by brand name Nulibry, for injection to reduce the risk of death due to molybdenum cofactor deficiency type A, a rare genetic metabolic disorder that typically presents in the first few days of life, causing intractable seizures, brain injury, and death. Patients with molybdenum cofactor deficiency type A experience severe and rapidly progressing neurologic damage, including intractable seizures, feeding difficulties, and muscle weakness from the accumulation of toxic sulfite metabolites in the central nervous system. Most patients die, unfortunately, in early childhood from infections. Before today's approval, the only treatment options included supportive care and therapies directed towards the complications arising from the disease. Patients with the molybdenum cofactor deficiency type A cannot produce a substance known as cyclic pyranopterin monophosphate. Nulibry is an IV medication that replaces the missing cPMP. The effectiveness of Nulibry for the treatment of molybdenum cofactor deficiency was demonstrated in 13 treated patients compared to 18 matched untreated patients. The patients treated with Nulibry had a survival rate of 84% at 3 years, compared to 55% for untreated patients. The most common side effects included complications related to the intravenous line, fever, respiratory infections, vomiting, gastroenteritis, and diarrhea. Phototoxicity was seen in animals, so patients treated with Nulibry should avoid exposure to sunlight and wear sunscreen, protective clothing, and sunglasses when exposed to the sun. The FDA granted this application priority review and breakthrough therapy designation. Nulibry also received orphan drug designation, which provides incentives to assist and encourage the development of drugs for rare diseases. The sponsor is also receiving a rare pediatric disease priority review voucher under a program intended to encourage development of new drugs and biologics for the prevention and treatment of rare pediatric diseases. A voucher can be redeemed by a sponsor at a later date to receive priority review of a subsequent marketing application for a different product. And finally this week, the FDA granted accelerated approval to melphalan flufenamide, which goes by brand name Pepaxto, in combination with dexamethasone for adult patients with relapsed or refractory multiple myeloma who have received at least 4 prior lines of therapy and whose disease is refractory to at least 1 proteasome inhibitor, 1 immunomodulatory agent, and 1 CD38-directed monoclonal antibody. Efficacy was evaluated in Horizon, a multi-center, single-arm trial. Eligible patients were required to have relapsed refractory multiple myeloma. Patients received Pepaxto 40 mg IV on day 1 and dexamethasone 40 mg orally on days 1, 8, 15, and 22 of each 28-day cycle until disease progression or unacceptable toxicity. Efficacy was evaluated in a subpopulation of 97 patients who received 4 or more prior lines of therapy and were refractory to at least 1 proteasome inhibitor, 1 immunomodulatory agent, and a CD38-directed antibody. The main efficacy outcome measures were overall response rate and duration of response, assessed by investigators according to the International Myeloma Working Group criteria. The overall response rate was 23.7% and median duration of response of 4.2 months. Safety was evaluated in 157 patients enrolled in Horizon. Most common adverse reactions are fatigue, nausea, diarrhea, and respiratory tract infection. The most common lab abnormalities are decreased leukocytes, platelets, lymphocytes, neutrophils, and hemoglobin, and increased creatinine. This indication is approved under accelerated approval based on response rate. Continued approval for this indication may be contingent upon verification and description of clinical benefit in confirmatory trials. This application was granted priority review and orphan drug designation. And that's all I have for right now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you heard today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.